Most people are going to walk into their grocery store in June and feel it immediately. The prices, the empty shelves in certain aisles, the quiet reorganization that happened while they weren't paying attention. And they're going to wonder when it all shifted. But here's the thing, it already shifted. It's shifting right now. And if you know where to look, the signs are everywhere. I've been watching this closely for the past several months. Retail data, supplier news, price tracking tools. And what I've pieced together is genuinely concerning for everyday shoppers who aren't paying attention. Today, I'm going to walk you through 10 specific grocery items you need to buy before June 1st. Not because I want to scare you, but because the people who act now are going to look back and feel smart. The people who wait are going to feel the squeeze. And I need to tell you, number 7 on this list completely caught me off guard. I've been buying this item my whole life and I had no idea what was happening behind the scenes. You won't believe number 7? We'll get there. If you're new here, please hit subscribe right now. I put out content like this every week because I believe regular people deserve to know what's actually happening, not just what big retailers want them to think is happening. Let's get into it. Shaka. Item number 1, canned tomatoes. This one feels almost too simple to mention, and that's exactly why most people are going to miss it. Canned tomatoes are a foundation ingredient. Soups, sauces, stews, casseroles. They sit on your shelf for years. And right now, the price trajectory on canned tomatoes is moving in one direction. The issue starts with the California processing tomato crop. California produces the overwhelming majority of processed tomatoes sold in American supermarkets, and the 2025 growing season faced real challenges with heat stress and water allocation constraints in the Central Valley. That kind of supply pressure doesn't show up at the store instantly. It takes 6 to 12 months to work its way through the processing pipeline and into retail pricing. I looked at the year-over-year price data on standard 28-ounce cans across multiple retailers last month. What I found was a consistent pattern of quiet price increases. Nothing dramatic in one jump, but 3 to 5% here, another few percent there. By summer, analysts tracking food commodities are expecting those increases to become much more visible. When I stocked up on canned tomatoes last fall, I thought I was being cautious. Now I'm realizing I may not have bought enough. I've been going through them faster than I expected because I've started cooking more at home, and I suspect a lot of you have done the same. My recommendation is to buy a full case, 24 cans, before the end of May. Store them in a cool, dark place. A basement shelf or a pantry closet works perfectly. They'll keep for 2 to 3 years easily. You're not hoarding, you're just shopping smart with a longer time horizon. You don't want to be at the store in August, looking at a can that costs 40 cents more than it did in March. That adds up fast. Citru. Item. Number 2. Dry pasta. Pasta feels like one of those things that will always be cheap. It's always been cheap. It's practically synonymous with budget cooking. But that assumption is about to get tested. Wheat prices have been volatile globally for the past 2 years. A lot of that volatility has been absorbed by manufacturers and retailers who are trying not to spook customers. But there's only so long they can hold the line. We're starting to see that resistance break. National brands have already begun what the industry calls price normalization. That's a polite way of saying they raised prices and are now testing how much consumers will tolerate before switching to store brands. And here's the thing, store brands are following right behind them with their own quiet adjustments. I track a grocery app that logs prices week over week, and I pulled the data on pasta over the last 6 months. The pattern is clear. 1 pound boxes of standard spaghetti and penne are up meaningfully across Walmart, Target, and regional grocery chains. The increases look small on a per-box basis. But if you use pasta once or twice a week the way most families do, that adds up to real money over a year. I personally picked up 20 pounds of dry pasta in different shapes in April. I vacuum sealed most of it in Ziploc bags with the air pressed out. Stored it in a bin in my pantry. Dry pasta has an essentially indefinite shelf life when stored properly. It doesn't spoil, it doesn't go bad, It just sits there waiting to save you money. Buy it now while you still see it at prices that feel normal. Normal isn't going to last. Chartreuse. Item number 3. Cooking oils. I want to talk about cooking oils because this category has been quietly chaotic for 2 years and most consumers have no idea. Vegetable oil, canola oil, olive oil, sunflower oil. These are all connected to global agricultural systems that have experienced repeated disruptions. The olive oil situation in particular has been well documented in the food press. Poor harvests across Spain, Italy and Greece pushed olive oil prices to levels that shocked even regular buyers. But what's less discussed is what happened to the substitutes. Canola and sunflower oil saw their own supply pressures as buyers shifted. The result is a category where pricing has become unpredictable. And unpredictable in this context almost always means upward pressure, not downward. Retail data from early 2026 shows that cooking oil as a category is sitting at elevated price levels, with little sign of meaningful relief in the near term. The harvest cycles that could bring prices down are still months away, and even optimistic projections suggest consumers won't see relief at the shelf until late 2026 at the earliest. When I was shopping last month, I noticed that the largest containers of vegetable and canola oil, the gallon jugs, had started to look expensive in a way they never used to. I remember thinking these used to be the value size buy. Now the math is tighter. Get the largest container you can reasonably store and use within a year. Oils do go rancid, so don't overbuy. But 1 or 2 large containers now, before summer pricing kicks in, is genuinely smart. Keep them in a cool, dark spot away from your stove. This is about protecting your cooking budget. That's not a small thing. Dusty item. Number 4. Canned fish and seafood. Tuna, salmon, sardines, anchovies. These aren't glamorous, but they might be some of the most valuable cans in your pantry over the next year. Canned fish provides complete protein at a cost per serving that's genuinely hard to match. A can of tuna for $1.50 gives you 30 grams of protein. In a world where meat prices have been grinding upward for years, canned seafood is one of the last real protein bargains left in the grocery store. The problem is that it's starting to lose that bargain status. Fishing quotas, fuel costs for commercial fishing fleets, and global demand from markets outside the US have all put pressure on supply chains for canned seafood. Several major brands reduced their can sizes, the quiet shrinkflation that's been happening across the grocery store, and then began raising prices on top of those smaller sizes. I noticed this about 8 months ago when I picked up a can of albacore tuna that felt noticeably lighter than what I remembered. I checked. The standard can had gone from 6 ounces to 5. Same label, smaller product. That's the kind of thing that happens gradually and then suddenly feels obvious. Canned fish keeps for 2 to 4 years easily. Stock a variety. Tuna for sandwiches and salads, salmon for patties and pasta, sardines for snacking, and omega-3s. Buy what you'll actually use. If your family doesn't eat sardines, don't buy sardines. But whatever you reach for regularly, stock it now. The price on these items is going up, quietly, steadily, and probably faster than you'd expect. Saraf. Item number 5. Rice is the staple food for more people on Earth than any other single crop. Billions of people eat it every day. That global demand creates pricing dynamics that affect American consumers even though we're not heavy rice eaters compared to Asia. Here's what's been happening. Several major rice exporting countries have placed export restrictions or levies on their rice to protect domestic food security. That tightens global supply. It pushes importing countries to pay more. And eventually, that cost finds its way to your grocery store shelf. This isn't a new story. Rice prices spiked sharply in 2023 and 2024 for exactly these reasons. What most consumers missed is that prices didn't fully come back down. They settled at a new normal that's meaningfully higher than where they were a few years ago. And with continued uncertainty in the global supply chain, There's no strong reason to expect a significant pullback in 2026. I pulled the price per pound on long-grain white rice from multiple retailers over the past year. The trend is flat to slightly up. That might not sound alarming, but for a staple this important, flat is the new down. We're not seeing the declines that usually follow a supply spike. The elevated prices are sticking. 20-pound bags of rice are still widely available and still represent good value compared to buying smaller quantities. Store rice in airtight containers, food-grade buckets with lids work great, and it will last essentially indefinitely. White rice stores longer than brown because the oils in brown rice can go rancid. Get a couple of large bags now. It's not dramatic, it's just smart. Chattase. Item. Number 6. Butter and cooking fats. Butter has become a luxury product in slow motion. I don't think most people have fully registered this yet. The price of a standard pound of butter has climbed significantly over the past 2 years, and the increases aren't isolated to one brand or one store. This is a category-wide shift driven by dairy economics that are complex but ultimately simple in their effect. Milk prices, feed costs, and processing costs all went up, and butter absorbed more of that than most other dairy products because of how it's priced and distributed. Retail tracking data from early 2026 shows butter prices sitting well above their 5-year average with no strong signal of correction. The dairy industry doesn't move fast. When prices go up, they tend to stay up for a long time before any meaningful relief arrives at the shelf. I was at Costco about 6 weeks ago, and I noticed they had salted butter at a price that still looked reasonable compared to what I'd been seeing at my regular supermarket. I bought 4 pounds. My wife looked at me sideways. But butter freezes beautifully. You can freeze it for up to a year with no quality loss at all. Just keep it wrapped well and put it in a freezer bag. If you have freezer space, butter is one of the best things you can stock right now. Buy more than you think you need. You can freeze it and forget about it until prices look even worse, which, based on current trends, they will. This is about your cooking budget and your family's ability to eat well without watching every cent. Butter matters. Jaran. Item. Number 7. Baby formula and toddler nutrition products. I know this one is going to surprise people. It surprised me too. And this is the one I told you to watch for. You would think that something as essential as infant formula would be stable, well-stocked, and reliably available. The supply crisis of 2022 should have been a one-time shock that the industry fixed. In some ways, the industry did respond. More domestic manufacturing, more backup suppliers, better inventory protocols, but the structural vulnerabilities that made 2022 so bad have not been fully resolved. The market is still dominated by a very small number of manufacturers. A disruption at any one of them creates an outsized shortage. And with ongoing import tariff changes affecting the trade environment in early 2026, specialty formulas, particularly European brands and hypoallergenic options, are facing new pricing and availability pressures right now. I have a friend who works in retail category management for a regional grocery chain. She told me recently that the specialty formula section is the one she watches most nervously. Not because of a current crisis, but because she knows how fast it can turn. One production issue at one facility, and you have parents in a panic across multiple states. If you have an infant or toddler who depends on formula or specialized nutrition products, please don't treat this as a just-in-time purchase. Build a rotation. Keep a 2 to 3 month supply on hand at all times. Check expiration dates and rotate stock. Buy the brand your child does well on before you need it. For most families, formula is not negotiable. It's not a food you can swap out when prices spike. That makes it more important to buy ahead, not less. You don't want to be standing in an empty aisle with a hungry baby. I've talked to parents who lived through 2022. They all say the same thing. Stock it before you need it. Charters. Item. Number 8. Spices and seasonings. This one flies completely under the radar. Nobody panic buys cumin. But maybe they should think about it. Spices are heavily sourced from specific growing regions around the world. Black pepper from Vietnam and India, cinnamon from Sri Lanka and Indonesia, cumin from India and the Middle East, chili peppers from multiple regions. Each of these origins has faced some combination of drought, flooding, political instability, or export disruption over the past 2 years. The result is a spice market that has become quietly expensive. If you've bought a jar of premium black pepper or ground cinnamon recently, you may have noticed it felt like a lot of money for a small jar. That's not your imagination. Dried spices have a long shelf life, especially whole spices, which keep their potency for 3 to 5 years when stored in sealed jars away from heat and light. Ground spices lose potency faster, but are still usable for 1 to 2 years easily. I spent an afternoon reorganizing my spice cabinet a few weeks ago, and I was shocked at how many of my everyday spices were running low. I made a list and bought whole jars of everything I use regularly: cumin, smoked paprika, garlic powder, onion powder, Italian seasoning, cayenne, ground ginger, cinnamon. I spent about $40, and I now have a fully stocked spice supply for the next 2 years. That $40 would cost me $55 or $60 if I'd waited until late summer based on the price trends I'm tracking. Buy your spices now, in full jars. It's one of the highest return purchases you can make in the grocery store right now. Item number 9. Frozen vegetables. Frozen vegetables are one of the most underrated categories in the grocery store. They're often nutritionally superior to fresh vegetables that have been sitting in distribution chains for days. They're convenient, they're versatile, and right now they're still reasonably priced, but that window is starting to close. The processing and freezing infrastructure for vegetables requires energy, labor, and packaging, all of which have become more expensive. Add to that the fact that raw vegetable prices themselves have been volatile due to weather disruptions in major growing regions like the Salinas Valley in California and the farming regions in Florida and Georgia. Retail pricing on frozen vegetables has been relatively stable because large brands have been absorbing costs to maintain market share. But that strategy has limits, and industry insiders have been signaling that a repricing of the frozen vegetable category is coming in the second half of 2026. I do a big freeze vegetable stock up about twice a year. I buy large bags of peas, corn, broccoli, spinach, and mixed vegetables. I focus on items that have the most cooking versatility, things I can put in soups, stir-fries, pasta dishes, omelettes. I don't buy anything exotic or specialized that I won't actually use. If your freezer has space, now is an excellent time to fill it with frozen vegetables. Buy the largest bags available from Walmart, Costco, or your preferred retailer. You're getting better value per ounce in the large bag, and you're locking in current pricing before the expected increases hit. This is about eating well on a budget. Frozen vegetables help you do that. Stock them now. Shaktisin, item number 10. Coffee. I've been saving coffee for last because the coffee story is genuinely alarming if you follow it closely. And almost no one follows it closely. Coffee is grown in a narrow band around the equator known as the Coffee Belt. The two most important producing countries are Brazil and Vietnam. Both have experienced significant weather disruptions to their crops over the past 2 growing seasons. Brazil, which produces more coffee than any other country in the world, had back-to-back seasons affected by drought and then frost at critical periods in the growing cycle. The result is that global coffee inventories have dropped to historically low levels. Commodity prices for green coffee beans roughly doubled between 2023 and early 2026. That is not a small increase. That is a massive supply shock-driven price spike, and it has not fully flowed through to retail prices yet. Think about that. The raw ingredient doubled in price. But the coffee you buy at the grocery store hasn't doubled. That's because roasters and retailers have been absorbing costs using older inventory and managing their supply carefully to avoid sticker shock at the shelf. But that buffer is running out. Analysts tracking the coffee market are expecting significant retail price increases in the second half of 2026, The estimates I've seen range from 20% to 40% increases on packaged ground and whole bean coffee at grocery stores. That's not a rounding error. That's a real hit to the budget of anyone who drinks coffee every day, which is most American adults. I started buying extra coffee in February. I bought whole beans from Costco, $12 bags that are now $13.50, and I've been storing them in the freezer in vacuum-sealed bags. Coffee freezes very well when it's properly sealed. Whole beans hold their quality in the freezer for 6 to 12 months. If you drink coffee and you have freezer space, this is the single most important thing you can do right now. Buy 3 to 6 months of your normal coffee consumption. Buy it now. Freeze what you don't need immediately. When prices jump this fall, and they will, you'll be sitting on a supply that you bought at last year's prices. That is real money. That is a real win for your household budget. You will not regret buying extra coffee. You will absolutely regret not buying it. So here's the pattern that ties all 10 of these items together. We are living through a period of persistent supply disruption. The causes are different for each item. Climate stress on crops, global trade shifts, energy and labor costs, concentrated supply chains with few backup options. But the outcome is the same every time. Less supply, more demand, higher prices at your grocery store. The retailers know this. The manufacturers know this. The distributors know this. The people who don't know it, or who know it but haven't acted, are the everyday shoppers who will walk in this summer and feel the difference without understanding why. That's not going to be you. You now know what's coming. You know which specific items to prioritize. You know how to store them. You know why the timing matters. This is not about panic buying. It's not about extreme measures. It's about buying what you already use, buying it now instead of later, and buying a little more than you normally would. Because the economics of the next 6 months favor people who act today over people who wait. The goal isn't a bunker full of supplies. The goal is 12 months from now, looking back and realizing your grocery bill didn't spike as hard as everyone else's because you made a few smart moves in May of 2026. Most people will notice too late. That won't be you. If this video gave you something useful, a real piece of actionable information you can use this week, please hit the like button. It takes 1 second and it helps this channel reach more people who need this kind of content. Subscribe if you haven't already. I come out with content like this every week. Practical, specific, and based on real data. Not doom, not panic, just the information you need to make smart decisions for yourself and your family. Leave me a comment below. Tell me which item on this list surprised you the most. Or tell me what you've already been stocking up on. I want to hear from you. And stay tuned. Next week, I'm going to cover something that almost nobody is talking about yet. It has to do with a category of household products that's about to get significantly more expensive because of a supply chain issue that started 18 months ago and is just now hitting the retail shelf. You're going to want to see it. Take care of yourselves. Be smart out there. I'll see you next week.